You are watching the Movicon HMI Editor Basics self-guided video tutorial series. In this video, we will build the setup screen. Hi, I'm Matt Pelletier. For this video, I am assuming you've already completed the previous videos in this series. I think the setup screen is the simplest of all the remaining screens, so let's do this one first. The setup screen doesn't depend on the others, such as the control panel, auto or jog, alarms, recipes. Okay, so let's start with the setup screen. And it will be pretty easy to test the function as soon as we get it built like this. What we've got here is just a number of text labels. You see a variety of switches and lamps and buttons. Most of this is really straightforward. Just find the button, label it, and attach the variable to it. The Close HMI Project button and the HMI IP address are a little bit different. For Close HMI Project, you'll use another command. This time it's a system command, and it's called Shutdown Application. We have used screen commands before, and this one's called a system command. There's a number of different commands possible. Let's cancel that. Okay. There's another use for the sysvar in the HMI IP address field. You can see there's an element called host IP. That's part of the sysvar HMI variable. Everything else on this page is simply linked to a variable on the controller with that HMI prefix. Those are those variables that we imported. Moving forward in this, and in the rest of the MiniLabs, there's a really interesting tool you'll want to use. It's called the watch window. I'd ask you to follow along with me right now just to see this in your project as it stands. I've reverted back to the point that we were at here together with the setup screen empty. You need to find this little floating taskbar, sometimes on the top or on a different screen. And the watch window is this button here in the middle. Click that button, and up pops the watch window. It might look a little different than this. You may need to click on one of the buttons here for it to activate the screen, and so you can see the icons. Now here's how we use it. There's different tabs down here, and one of them is called Project, but you want to go to the tabs called Watch 1 or Watch 2. I'll go to Watch 1. Then click on this icon in the middle called New Watch. That brings up the familiar tag browser that you've seen now. So just pick any variable or any tag such as sysvar. Okay. Then we could expand this here, sysvar. Looks like the items could be alphabetized, sorted here. Okay, active screen is the one that we have been using. You'll see as I go to the different screens that the active screen value is changing. That should be no surprise. Why don't we go back in here and add another one? From the controller, there's one called Clear Alarms Request. I'll type in this filter here, clear, choose Clear Alarms Request. And here now I've brought up the controller web user interface. I've got the Clear Alarms request showing. And I'll show you how you click on it once, and then click once again, type in the value. The value of 1 means true, and you see that the controller takes that value. I'll go back to 0 or false, and the controller reflects that as well. Pretty handy troubleshooting tool. It works only within the software in the runtime here. Another useful area that you should try is the Locales window. It looks like a lightning bolt. Let's see how that works here real quick. There's the lightning bolt and the Locales window. This is context sensitive. Wherever you click, for example, here I clicked on the button, but it reads that as a click on the embedded screen. I'll click on the embedded screen, and it's telling me the data that's a part of that screen. I'll click on Auto, and you see that screen 1 has a value of 1. Remember that little equation we entered in there? There they all are. I've clicked on Setup, now it's on number 2. Okay. Once again here, if you would please open up that PDF for the MiniLab. The strategy we have in this MiniLab is to first lay out the controls with each object. Once they're all in place, then connect the variables and commands. Finally, press all the buttons in the runtime and verify that it works. Please use this MiniLab as your guide to get this done, and you can pause the video now. When you resume, you'll see me run through these steps myself. Welcome back. I'm going to go through the setup screen MiniLab. When I'm done here, the setup screen will be complete, and it will also take care of those alarms and servo parameters. The first step will be to lay out the controls. We'll start with the text labels here. I'm going to zoom a little bit here. We got system, servo parameters, etc. I don't need that setup text box. Let's go to basic shapes, text box. I'll draw that in there. That will be system reboot. Let's make that text white and change it to font size 16. No, that's too big. How about 12? Now I think the easiest way is to copy this and paste. Then I'll type in servo parameter mismatch. Write servo drive parameters. One thing is when you zoom like this, sometimes it makes the text look the wrong size. But if you zoom around or just do something to change the screen, it'll repaint the screen and refresh that. We got close HMI Project. I'll paste again. HMI IP address. Paste again for MPIC IP address. Paste again. Alarm testing. That takes care of all of these white texts. Now let's put in these switches and LEDs. Those will also be in the toolbox under switches, lights, LEDs, rectangular buttons. Here's the toolbox. I'll do the switches first here. I think that's a switch F. Let me move this stuff around. I'm going to zoom back in a little bit there. The text label on that switch, reboot required. Probably black isn't the best. Let's have white show up a little bit better. I'll use a yellow light for reboot required. That's under lights, LEDs, yellow lights. I'll draw that in there and put reboot required in white again. Now servo parameter mismatch has 3 red LEDs, or red lights. That's up to you, whichever you want to use. Okay. I'll draw that in there. I think I'll type in the letter first. Let's make it look the way I want here. White, size 14, bold. Okay, now I can copy this and paste it. And I'll just change these letters here to Y and Z, and that way the formatting is preserved. Right servo drive parameters, I have some rectangular buttons. I'm using green. I'll just take this first green one and make it look about the right dimension to fit 3 of them here in half the space. I'll do the same here. X, white, 12, bold. Now I can copy this and paste a couple times. I'll type in those letters here. Now on the right, close HMI Project was another switch. Let's go to switches. Switch B was red. You are welcome to use whichever switch you would like to use. The HMI IP address. Let me move these over a little bit. And now we have space for the EditBox-Display. Remember that's under Objects, EditBox-Display. That looks about right. I've got a note here about the EditBox-Display style to have read-only and remove spin enable. Move, spin, enable, read only, and apply. That looks right. Let's copy that. And now let's put in those buttons for low position error. That was here under round buttons, yellow round. I'll draw that in. And type in low PE, position error. And I want to have alarm clear below this. I'm going to stray a little bit from the template here of green and use red buttons. That's still a rectangular button, red rectangle. And I'll draw that one in. Type clear alarms, white, and font size 12, bold again. Okay. Another little bonus is there's an object called a group box. And those can be useful. You just put them in here like this, draw it in. It's nothing more than a way to group objects together visually on the screen. I'll get rid of that text called alarm testing and click right on here, alarm testing. In the same way, I can change the size of that font. Sometimes it looks like this, but again, if you just zoom around a little bit, you can refresh that. Now I can't get to the buttons. The group is on top. No problem. Here we've got buttons for bring to front and bring to back. So bring that group box to the back, and now I can move these around. That takes care of the layout. Let's move on and attach all of these variables. The key to getting this done quickly is to know what the variables are called, and then filter intelligently so you can find them quickly. I'll start with the reboot switch. That was command state. Let's look for reboot. And there's reboot request and reboot required. Oh, I got a mistake. That should say reboot request. Let me change that here real quick. Now reboot required. Command state variable, double click. Reboot required. Okay. Next here is the servo parameter mismatch. So let's search for mismatch. Enter. There's X. Double click, select the next one. Select, double click. There we go. Right servo drive parameter. So let's search for the word right. There they are. X, Y, and Z. I'm going to skip these here and let's just go for the controller variables. IP address was, search for IP, okay. And clear alarms. Search for clear. There it is, clear alarm request. The EditBox-Display variable for the HMI IP address is called host IP. That's part of the sysvar. So here under HMI IP address, that variable is, and I'm just going to delete and refresh, and because it starts with underscore, it will be alphabetized at the top. One thing you cannot do is you cannot filter to find elements within a structure. Only the name of the structure, not the element name. So we know it's called host IP. Now finally the close HMI project button has to be execute commands and commands on release to shut down. Let's change that command type to execute commands and commands on release, new command, and we'll go to the system tab and shutdown application is the default. So let's accept that one. Okay, to accept everything there. All right, let's verify functionality. Final step. Hit the Start Project button. And it's running here, and it looks like I do have parameter mismatch. I'll follow through the MiniLab here, starting with the IP address. You can expect an unfamiliar IP address because that's the IP address of the CCAMIA network connection. But the MPIEC is reporting its IP address here. Now we have parameter mismatches on. Right servo drive parameters. Let's try that here for X. You wait a little bit and then the lamp turns on. I'll just do the other axes as well, Y and Z. Now for those parameters to take place, you have to reboot. And I'll pull up the video so I can see that reboot happen. Let's try reboot request. You'll have to wait about 30 seconds. There we go, drives are rebooting. And the alarms are gone. And that's because the parameters are set correctly. Now for the alarm testing area, it says use the watch or locals. I've got the locals up. Remember, you need to find the little floating window and open up locals with the lightning bolt. I've got the clear alarms request up there in the watch. I'll press that. And that shows true. Let's add low PE now. Under new watch, star PE. There it is, set low PE. It's false. I'll press the button. It's still false. This tells me I must have missed a step and I don't have the right variable on here. That's okay. We can close the project and test that button. Let's look at this low PE button. Yeah, I have no variable here. Perfect example of how the watch window can help you troubleshoot your code. So let's go in there and choose PE, set low PE. Okay. Let's try this again. Low PE is on, instantly goes true, off, it's false. There's an additional feature in this IEC program, which is to use the Web UI status. It shows not all but many of the variables that are communicated to the HMI. And one of those is the HMI clear alarms request and low PE. Let's find those here in the Web UI under status. I'll dock that here to the right and move my windows out of the way. Clear alarms request is right here, and I'll turn that on. That proves we're communicating. Scroll down to the bottom of the page and you see set low PE is false. So I'll turn that on and it turns true. And it looks like everything's working. One of the best troubleshooting tips I can give you is to use this watch and locals monitor to see if the buttons are doing what you expect them to do. It's really easy to make a mistake, select the wrong thing, select the wrong variable. These are great troubleshooting tools. There's an optional exploration I'd like to show. What this is about is rather than have a separate switch for reboot request, why not allow the user to press and hold down the reboot required button for, let's say, 3 seconds. And that's pretty easy to do. So let me go through this here. Close the project and get back to the editing environment now. Reboot required. Let's change the style to clickable. By the way, there's really not a big difference between a push button and a lamp. You can make those lamps clickable just like the push buttons. Now we're going to add to this the execute command. We'll leave the command state variable there. That just controls whether or not that lamp is on. But we'll change the command type to execute commands. So commands on pressed. I would like to first wait 3 seconds and then set the bit for reboot request. And if I release it before that 3 seconds is up, I want to clear that request. So commands on pressed, double click. And one of the commands you put in there is called add wait time. I'll select it to edit it and change the timeout to 3000 milliseconds, okay? So there's the first command in the list. I'll put a new command after this, which is to operate the reboot request. That variable is reboot request. Now, really important here, when you choose the action set, that you type in the value. Set does not imply only the value of true, because this variable could be a different data type. This variable could be a different data type that accepts an integer or floating point value. So put in that 1 here, and that's right, okay. Now for commands on release, I want to reset the reboot request back to false. So commands on release, new command, choose the variable here, reboot request. The action will be reset. When you choose reset, you don't put in the value, it's assumed to be 0 or false. Okay. Okay. Let's try this out and start the project. Save the changes. Okay to eval mode. I've got the locals screen up. And if I click on the screen or on the button, it updates to button 12. I'm expanding it to show the value of the two variables associated with that button. And as I click on it, less than 3 seconds, it doesn't change. I'm going to click on the right servo drive parameter. Now I've got true on reboot required, and I'm going to press and hold down 1, 2, 3, and it went true there for a second. Now the controller is rebooting again. There's the end of the reboot sequence. And that's the end of this MiniLab. Thank you very much. Thank you for watching this video, and please go to www.yaskawa.com/HMI for more information on Yaskawa's HMI products and Movicon HMI editor.